And I want to pull up my presentation here. So this you should be looking now at the investor um, seminar. Our name opens the doors, our agents close the deals. This could be presented as a seminar, as an educational tool for people that are interested in investing in real estate. You could also use this as a buyer consultation with a specific investor. And it's structured a little different in terms and this, by the way, can be edited for your specific process. And this is something that we did at one point uh, with potential investors. But anyhow, the agenda for this is we talk about the buying process, financing, and using your IRA for funding, and insurance options, the myth of foreclosures, the truth about short sales, truth about bidding, how to find deals, inspections, and buy and hold versus flipping the property. And so then if we go through it, one of the key elements of the buying process is determining how you're going to pay. Are you going to buy your property with cash? Are you going to use a line of credit? Or are you going to finance your purchase in some manner? And what you're going to need when you buy a property, whether you're an investor or not, you're going to need either a pre-approval or a proof of funds. Sellers always want to see documentation that you can, in fact, buy the property for the money that you've offered to pay for it. Earnest money is the same for investors as it is for regular buyers, and that is 1% is the custom. However, more is a better, stronger offer. So the more solid and the better you can make your offer, the more likely you are to get a lower offer accepted. You want to select an agent because your agent can be key to finding deals instead of trying to hunt out there on your own. And then you want to find properties, and you want to use the best online resources that are out there. And Zillow or Trulia, they're not the best online resources. They will sell you as a lead. And their information isn't that complete. So obviously information coming directly out of the MLS or Connect BLC is the best, most timely information. Another good place for timely information is using the Realty World app. It's very easy to use. I would suggest always signing any buyer, whether they're a investor or not. Send them, share the Realty World app with them, and that way they'll search on the app instead of searching on Zillow or Trulia. And Virginia will tell you that her clients just love the app. Mine do too, the ones that have used it. I don't have as many, buyer clients anymore because I'm not actively trying to get new business. And so one of the things that is helpful, if you wanted to do this as a seminar and invite potential investors to it, one of the things you might want to have is a couple of financial experts there. So a lender that works specifically with investors and understands the ins and outs of investment lending would be great. There are funding options where you can put a purchase into a self-directed IRA. One of my clients did that, and it worked out really well for him. So he put all the properties that he bought into a self-directed IRA. It's through a third party. I forget the name of the third party that does that. Does anybody know who that is? No? Okay. I can get that for you, but there is a company that specializes in that and it can work very good for an investor in terms of a way for them to defer taxes on their investment. There's insurance considerations. So you need a good insurance agent to work with. And again, if you're going to do one of these as a seminar, I would invite an insurance agent that is well versed in investment properties and insurance considerations. You have to think about tenant occupied. If you're going to be buy and hold property where you hold it for income, then it's going to be tenant occupied, and so you need to understand what the insurance requirements are going to be for that, and keep in mind that will also be driven by a lender. If you're financing your purchase, then the lender may drive that as well. But you also need insurance during the rehab process. So you buy a property and your plan is to fix it up and flip it, or fix it up and put a renter in it. You still need to insure that property during the rehab process while you're rebuilding it. The property's going to be empty, and lots of things can happen to empty properties. I can tell you about that a little bit later. And of course, you want to be aware of flood insurance. Always, 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 no matter whether you're representing an investor or a regular buyer, always check to make sure about flood insurance. Because even though the current owner is not paying flood insurance, it could be that if you financed it, they would have to. So you just want to be careful. Always look at those flood maps to see where the property is, because that can really affect somebody's return on investment if they're having to pay flood insurance. Always talk about agency. So we talk about seller's agency, we talk about buyer agency, we talk about limited agency. We've talked about these things before, but you want to talk about those same things with your investor clients, so that they have an understanding of agency and they understand the value of agency. And one of the things that I always like to talk about is the myth of foreclosures, because a lot of times new investors, they think, oh, well, the best deals are foreclosures. If I can get my hand on a foreclosure, that's going to be my best deal. And it might be, sometimes they are a deal, but sometimes they're not. And you have to understand some of the reasons for foreclosure. Sometimes the reason that a foreclosure happens is because something goes bad at the house and the owner can't pay to fix it. And so the easiest thing to do is walk away from that property. So they get a bad roof leak. They get water penetration in the walls. Next thing you know, they've got a bad mold problem. And it's going to cost a lot of money, more than they have, to fix that house to be able to live in it. And so they just bail on it, and it goes to foreclosure. Now the bank has it, and some banks will repair that, some don't. So you have to be careful when you're buying a foreclosure. Just because somebody else doesn't want it doesn't mean you do. And you need to do the math. I always tell investors, make your money going in. So do the math. Does it make sense to buy this house? Is it really priced right, even if it's a foreclosure? Because I've seen foreclosures that are overpriced. You have to think about the competition on the market. It's not always a lot of fun to deal with banks. Sometimes it can take a while to get an answer. Some banks are better than others to deal with on foreclosures. And same thing with HUD. With HUD, you're going to bid for a property. And of course, you're not going to get the best advantage bidding with HUD unless they've opened it up to investors from the get-go. And the only properties they open up to investors from the get-go are ones that have real problems. Because otherwise they want owner occupants in those properties. You also want to be careful of buying as is. And then you might talk to them a little bit about short sales, what they are, what's the motivation, dealing with the bank, how long it takes to do a short sale, and is there a real chance of success with short sales? So you want to discuss that with them, because sometimes a short sale can be a property that an investor might want to go after. Um, you want to talk to them about bidding and the bidding process, depending on who's running the bidding or the auction. There are potential buyer fees that the buyer may have to pay. You're going to pay the highest price to get the property. That's how bidding works. So you pay the higher price of anybody bidding, and then you get the property. Sometimes that means that the property isn't a good deal anymore. So you have to be real careful when you're bidding that you don't overbid just to get the property. A lot of times it's not a transparent process, so you don't know who the other bids are and what they are. And so you can inadvertently offer way more than the other bids. And now you've paid a way high price that you didn't need to pay, but you didn't know what those other bids were. Um, and of course, HUD has restrictions for owner occupant. There's a period of time where only owner occupants can bid. And so the best properties go to owner occupants, the worst properties go to investors. So just be aware of that. The best properties are always going to go to owner occupants unless it's not a bidding thing. So if you can find a property that you can buy just through a homeowner, um, those are going to be better deals. So some of the places to find deals, your probate or estate properties, and you can search for those in the BLC. So those properties where the kids are selling the home, a lot of times they just want to be rid of the home. They just they want the best money they can get out of it, but they want it to happen quick. So a lot of times you can get a good deal. Stale listings that have been on the market for over 90 days, are properties that you might be able to pick up good as is properties, or ones that needs updates. Those are good properties to try to get. Divorces can be a way to get a property at a good price. Landlords that are liquidating their properties, sometimes they can be a good buy. Again, they just want out of the properties now. They're ready to liquidate, and they've got pretty good equity in their properties. And as an investor themselves, they're not emotional usually about the transaction. You want to talk to them about inspections. Do you waive the inspection or not? It's a good way to get a property by waiving the inspection, but watch out. There can be latent defects like knob and tube wiring. I think I've shared with you before, I had an investor that purchased a home, and there was a little cellar underneath the kitchen, and that's where the furnace and water heater and everything were. And down in that little cellar was a brand new electrical panel and everything. And so he made the assumption that the house had all new wiring. And so he didn't go in the attic. Usually he would stick his head up in the attic and see what there is to see up there. He didn't stick his head in the attic. And so he did not have an inspection. He bought the house. Later on, when he's owns the house, he climbs up in the attic and he finds out it's full of knob and tube wiring. He can't get it insured because of the knob and tube wiring. So now he has to rewire the entire house, and except for the furnace part down there, which is where the new breaker panel was. He had to rewire the entire house. And so needless to say, that affected his return on investment, at least for year one. I can tell you he did, eventually turn the corner on that one and make money on it. And he held that property for several years. But it was a surprise, and he learned a lesson from that of no matter what, he's going to stick his head in the attic. Uh, you have to take into account the experience level of the investor. Do they know what to look for? If not, then they should definitely get a home inspection. Um, Also, you can develop a rehab list from an inspection, because knowing the defects can help with a rehab and the flip. So if you're going to flip a property, you might as well know all the things that an inspector is going to find, because they're going to find those same things when your buyer comes along to buy your flip. So by having it pre-inspected, or if you're good enough that you can inspect it yourself, you can put together a rehab list of all the stuff that inspectors are going to find and that they're going to want you to fix. And of course, having an inspection means no surprises. Unexpected repairs obviously can throw a wrench in your return on investments. Um, and then, I talk a little bit about finding properties there. Buy and hold. So there's two ways you can go. You can buy and flip and buy and hold. Buy and hold is investment in income properties. Time's of the essence. The sooner you get somebody in there, the sooner you're making money. You let the tenant pay for the property equity, so the tenant is buying the house for you. Do the math, make sure that you're charging enough in rent. Finding tenants that I've been told, I don't have any rental properties myself, but all of my rental uh, uh, investors have told me that the best place to find tenants is on Zillow. And so they run their own ads on Zillow, and they get plenty of tenants that way. So that's how they find tenants. But it's very important that you vet tenants. And that means that you have to be familiar with the credit process and who is credit worthy. Some of the best investors that I have had, that I've worked with, were financial people in the first place. And so one of my best investors, for instance, owned a leasing company. And see, he knew all about vetting people financially. He knew how to run credit reports on them. And so he was able to get good tenants that way. And that's very important if you're going to have income properties. You also have to decide, are you going to manage them yourself, or are you going to hire somebody to manage them? Are you going to use a management company? Um, and So you have to think about that. And then the eviction process, and that is, you want to start eviction as soon as it's practical. Don't ever buy into the sob stories that renters give you, or you'll never evict them, and you'll end up with people living rent-free in your property, and it'll take you a long time to get them out of there. So start it right away. As soon as they're late on a payment, then start the eviction process. It's important to do that. If you're going to buy and sell, flip it. Speed's of the essence. Again, you got to get your flip done in the shortest time possible. Don't over improve the property. I don't know how many new investors that I've helped through the years that they watch HGTV and they see all these fancy improvements that flippers do to properties. And so then they buy a property and they put in granite and they put in tile floors and custom tile bathrooms. And the next thing you know, they can't get their money out of it because it's way over improved for the neighborhood. And no one will pay that even to get granite and custom tile in the neighborhood that the house is in. And so the house just sits on the market. Now they got all kinds of holding costs. Not only that, it usually takes longer to do a flip like that. So do the math. Take a look at your competition, who you're competing against. Now, if all your competition has custom tile and granite counters, then you better do the same thing. And you need to know that before you buy the property. So look at who your competition is going to be when your property goes on the market for sale. You want to list it at or below market value. And you want to factor in holding costs, what's it going to cost you to hold this property? So the sooner you can get that flip done, the less your holding costs are going to be. The sooner you sell that property, the less your holding costs are going to be, and the quicker you're going to get your money out. And then you have to be aware of possible problems because these flip houses are vacant, and so vandals can break in and damage the property. I had one of my clients, he had this happen to him. The vandals broke in, completely trashed the property. It was vacant. They were actually selling drugs out of the vacant property. And so, and then uh, he hired a contractor to go in and rehab the property. And the contractor, during the rehab process, the contractor had vandals or someone broke into the property and stole all of his tools out of the property. So you have to be very careful with vacant properties. And by the way, this property was in Carmel. It was in Home Place, but it was in Carmel. So it can happen even in nicer areas. Um, so that's just a little presentation that you could do for a uh, for a for an investor. Any questions?
No
Nobody has
questions.
any? Okay. I also have some spreadsheets that investors can use to calculate some of their costs. And so if you would like those, just let me know, and I'll send that spreadsheet out to you in the format that you'd like it in, either numbers or Excel. But some investors like doing that. Do you do any investor financing, Blake?
No, I mean, not beyond what Fannie Mae will do. I think Fannie Mae will
Yeah.
finance one or two investor
Yeah. How
properties.
about William, Pat?
Sorry, I had to unmute. He has worked with investors, yes. But yeah, I wish he was here to respond himself.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so William might be a source of someone that works with investors. Um, and so at any rate, that's an important part if you're going to have an investor client, is to be able to help them through that process, unless they have lots of cash. If they have lots of cash, then you don't have to worry too much about financing. Okay, anything else for the good of the cause? Okay, I'm going to stop the recording, and